Okay, I think we are good to go here. Hello, everyone. My name is Hector Acuna. I'm just taking a second, like always, to make sure that I am, in fact, live here. So just give me 1 second here. Okay, I think we're good. All right, let's get started. Hi, my name is Hector Acuna. As I just said, I'm an artist living in Wisconsin, and if this is your first time on my YouTube channel, thanks for finding it. I'm so glad that you're here and you're hopefully gonna check out this video. If you're not that familiar with my work, I am a painter. I mostly make oil paintings, but I also like to make gouache paintings and egg tempera paintings. This stream is talking all about a plein air festival that I participated in back in July, so very recently, at the end of the month, up in Door County, Wisconsin, which, again, if you're not familiar with Wisconsin either, it's the kind of like thumb peninsula right off of the state into Lake Michigan, and it creates the Green Bay in Wisconsin. So there is an art school there called the Peninsula School of Art, which hosts and organizes this really high quality, kind of standard in the sense that a lot of other events look at Door County as kind of the model for running a very successful plein air festival. And this year it was their 18th year running this event. It was my third year as a participating invited artist, so I was very excited and happy to be part of the group again this year. And July was a very busy month for me, partially because of this event, but prior to the event, I spent like half of the month with my wife in Spain and Portugal. It was our first European trip for both of us, so that was a big, exciting adventure for us, and we're really happy that that was something that we got to do together. And yeah, so July was a really jam-packed month because, if you have been keeping up with my channel or you were here for the live stream with my June recap of 2024, June was also a really busy month, and then going into July, I had 2 or 3 days here at home before we flew to Spain, and we spent the first half of the month of July in Spain and Portugal, and then we flew back, and I had 4 days before I had to go up to Door County to start the plein air festival. So it was a really, really busy month, but it was really memorable, and I'm just really grateful that I got to experience a lot of that stuff last month. So this video is really just about the Door County Plein Air Festival. I'm not planning to talk about our trip to Spain in this video. I might still try to do a little bit of a recap on that trip because it was, as I said, very memorable, but also the trip to Spain was really inspirational for me in a lot of ways, because a lot of my favorite painters that I studied as an art student and that I still talk about when I teach are painters in Spain's history, and a lot of the work that I've studied was located in museums in Spain. So it was a really incredible trip as an artist to be able to do that. So I definitely want to talk about Spain at some point. It just won't be today. I don't really have the time. And I think it would create a 4 or 5 hour live stream, which I don't think anyone wants. So today we're just looking at the Door County Plein Air Festival. And I wanted to start out the presentation by, just initially talking about the Small Works show. So each plein air festival is a little bit different. If you're new to plein air events and it's something that you want to get into, or maybe you've been doing a lot of local events and you want to try to get into some of these more nationally recognized events where artists who are participating are from all over the country, if not abroad, or the world. They're all a little bit different. So in Door County, what they do during the first day, like the opening day of the event, every artist that is invited brings or ships in a small works painting. I think most of them are plein air paintings. I don't think it's required that it has to be a plein air painting. Some of them are probably also studio paintings. But this painting that I brought in was one that I created earlier this year during the Plein Air Convention and Expo down in Cherokee, North Carolina. So this year I was one of the faculty artists for the Plein Air Convention, and this painting was one that I made, I think, on the second or third day. So it was small enough to fit within the size restraints of the Small Work show at the Plein Air Festival. And it's a one-day kind of like pop-up show in the gallery. And each artist, like I said, has a single painting that's available for purchase. And I like the format of that part of the show because in front of the painting on the wall, there is a little box that's hanging where anyone who goes to see this show can write their name down and place it in the box to be drawn to then purchase the painting. So it creates a lot of buzz and it allows the new artists in the event to share their work in person as we start to go out and make our paintings for the week. So like I said, this was my little 5 by 7 inch oil painting looking at the Smoky Mountains from Cherokee, North Carolina. And then this picture was taken by Dennis Connolly. He's the event photographer at the Plein Air Festival. And it's really kind of cool to see this wall of portraits that were photographed during the week of every artist in the show, kind of on location, in action. So a lot of them are kind of funny because the artist is sometimes talking like I am in this picture, or they're, really concentrating. But I like that they're a little bit more candid. And so this was the one from this year. And I try to at least photograph mine. That way I can keep track of some of that stuff. But all right, let's go ahead and jump right in. So something that I don't have pictured in the presentation, but that was really unique about my experience in the festival this year happened right before the festival, actually. A friend of mine, Justin Vining, who is an artist living in Indianapolis, was an artist that was invited to Door County. So months in advance, he and I were kind of texting, and he was really nice to me and invited me to stay with him and his family on a trip that I was on coming back from the Bath County Plein Air Festival to Wisconsin. So on my way back, I stopped for a night and stayed with them. And I wanted to offer a similar, sort of invitation to him if he had the time or wanted to. He was invited and welcome to stay with Megan and I on his way from Indianapolis to Door County. So he took us up on that opportunity and spent the night with us on Saturday. And then he drove up Sunday morning to check in for the Door County Plein Air Festival, and I followed in the afternoon after I had loaded everything up. So before I started the event, it was already this really new kind of fun experience because I got to get to know Justin a lot better, and it was fun to share my studio with him and my workshop area and just talk about being a painter and the ups and downs and all of the great things that we get to do, and just share some of our experiences. So I really appreciated that time I had with Justin going into the Plein Air Festival. So then on Sunday, I checked in probably about an hour before our required orientation meeting that we had to attend, which is at 4 p.m. on Sunday. And so I just brought my panels in, started, chatting with some of the artists that were there, and then we had our meeting. And then that evening I went to my host's house and had dinner with them and just sort of settled in for the week. So then Monday morning, I, got up to Gills Rock, which is at the north, west side of the peninsula. So from Ephraim, where my hosts live, it's about a 25-minute drive to get up there. And I painted in this spot last year for the Plein Air Festival and had a really great experience making 3 different paintings last year. And it was a spot that I thought I could probably find something new there that would pique my interest and, could create some interesting paintings with some of the fishing boat, materials. And as you can kind of see from some of the pictures here, this large delivery truck is used by a fishing company, and it's basically a giant cooler on the back of this truck. So once or twice a day, I think almost every day of the week, they plug in the cooler and start to charge up and cool down that box, and then they load it up with fish and deliver the fish to different establishments, whether they're stores or restaurants. And I can't remember the name of the fishing company off the top of my head now, but I painted one of their trucks, a smaller truck, for two of my paintings last year in the event. And this truck was there last year as well, but it's a lot longer, and it was just not something that I noticed as much last year. So when I got here, I walked around the entire sort of fishing port grounds and eventually came back to the trucks. I was trying really hard not to, go right to the trucks again. I wanted to see if maybe there was something else that might be interesting to paint. So you can kind of see I'm in the shadow, this cast shadow of the large truck here. And that worked out really nicely, actually. So this was a morning painting, and I was in the shade the entire time I worked on this painting. The biggest challenge I had while making this painting was that the truck eventually had to make a delivery. So I started this at about 9 o'clock on Monday morning, and I ended up finishing the painting on Thursday. So, I'll show you at the end of the presentation where the painting ended up. And I apologize, the lighting in the photos is really bad because I'm in the shade. And, I try really hard not to be on my phone when I'm painting during events. So because of that, I kind of forget to take, good photos and videos and, stuff for social media, or even just for myself, just to remember, stages of my paintings. There's something about, being in an event that kind of makes me feel a little bit weird about that. But anyway, you can kind of see where the painting was starting to end up by the end of the first session. So if you can't tell what this is, it's basically a very cropped view of the passenger side door of this truck. What drew me to the truck, or this section of the truck, was this little convex mirror that's on the right side of the door. And I liked the shape, that circular shape or oval shape, and what was being reflected inside of the mirror. So I was walking around with this little viewfinder that was a 1:3 ratio. My panel that I made here is 8 inches tall by 24 inches wide. It's a linen panel that I made in my garage, and it's oil primed. So I've really come to love this surface, and being able to make any size panels is really helpful. So that's something that has been really, really useful about making your own panels. And then just as I'm chatting here, I wanted to just remind people, if you have any questions or you want to share feedback, or if there's a story that you're enjoying that you want me to elaborate on, feel free to write that into the comments or the chat of the live stream, and I'll try my best to keep an eye on that, and I can respond as I go along. But yeah, so the other thing I wanted to point out about this particular painting is that there were two areas of convex mirrors that were featured on this truck. So the small one was the first one I noticed, and then on the corner of the truck, we might be able to see it in the second picture here. It's not that noticeable, but this little metal strip here, what we're seeing is the edge of a piece of some kind of metal. I'm not sure what it is exactly, but it was a little bit tarnished and corroded. But on that metal, it sort of wraps around the corner of the box on the truck, and it was reflecting all of this really interesting information that was kind of off camera here, but over on this side of the setup. So there was a little like shanty thing over there. You can kind of see it in the like blocked in stage of my painting here. The other thing that was really fun is that my painting itself was featured kind of in that part of the convex mirrored reflection as well. So this shape here is the like left, fifth of my painting, or sixth section of my painting here. So it became kind of meta really early on when I was blocking in the painting. I thought this would be really cool to feature all of these weird, combinations of reflected space, interior space, the window of the truck, the two windows of the truck, I should say, and then obviously like the natural, bay landscape as well. All right, let's go ahead and keep moving here. I'm going to try my best to keep today's presentation pretty brief. Okay, so I'm trying to remember now. Monday at about noon, somewhere around there, I had to leave Gills Rock because the truck left. But that was good because I felt like I was getting to a point in the painting where some of the temperatures that I was noticing were starting to shift. The intensity of the colors was moving into brighter, more vivid colors. And, it just sort of took a while to... sorry, I'm trying to remember some things here. It took a while for me to figure out where I wanted to paint next. And on Tuesday, so just to kind of give you some context on the event again, so the schedule for the event is pretty intense, I would say, in a good way. But when you sign in for the orientation, the school asks you to pick 2 locations on 2 different days during the week that you have to sign up for. That way the patrons for the event can come and meet you. They can come and watch you painting. They can ask you questions. And it offers a dependable schedule where anyone can come and meet the artist during the week. It also gives them a chance to see the paintings that you're working on, and from the school's perspective, to help kind of build some momentum for the exhibition on Friday and Saturday. So it's a really great idea. But because of that, you also then have to have a painting that's finished and framed and ready for the gallery by, I think, 3 p.m. on Tuesday. So when you check in on Sunday, I think you can check in starting at like 9 a.m. until 4. If you check in at like 9 or 10 in the morning, you can go out and start painting right away. And if you start at that point, you have like 2 full days to go out and make a painting for that Tuesday deadline. So it can be pretty quick to turn around with a finished painting, but everyone's more than capable of doing that. And it's nice for patrons to kind of get a feel for what you're working on, and just to see a finished painting from each artist is really exciting. So this ended up being my Tuesday sort of painting. This is a 1-session painting here that I made in Newport Beach State Park. And so I left Gills Rock at around noon, and I started driving, sort of northeast on the peninsula, and ended up over at Newport Beach State Park. I've been having this desire with my plein air work recently to paint more organic and natural subject matter. I don't know if it's just a phase that I'm going through, or if it's like this pendulum kind of process where you get really wrapped up in one kind of subject, or one sort of palette, or one sort of maybe compositional ratio, and you just have to change it up. And I think I've been doing so much architectural sort of geometric types of subjects that it's been fun to kind of move back into more organic types of shapes and subject matter. So I went to this park hoping to find some trees and sort of forest, forest scenes. And I spent a lot of time actually walking around on one of the trails by the main beach there. So I loaded up my backpack. I brought this panel with me and my easel and everything, and started walking out on this trail. And it was one of those moments where, you start walking and you see something and you go, oh, that's a pretty interesting view. I might work with this. I might keep this and start the painting. But I also want to see what else is like, a quarter mile down the trail. So I kept doing this. I kept sort of like finding something and looking through this 1x1, paper viewfinder, and thought this could work. This might be interesting. But I kept struggling with the the contrasts in that trail, that section of the trail, whether I looked towards the water, it was just a little too extreme. The dark values to the bright, water, kind of waterfront values. And then if I turned around and looked at just the forest, that felt a little too low in contrast. Like everything was a little too compressed. So there wasn't really anything that was fitting this feeling that I was hoping to find. That was an issue I found. The other thing that was sort of a challenge that I wasn't resolving was I wanted to find a particular type of tree. So I've been interested in painting portraits of trees lately too, with my plein air process, and really just getting to know a single tree. So it really, to me, it feels like you're doing a portrait. And there wasn't any one tree that really stuck out to me during that hike on the trail, but I was walking for over an hour looking for something to paint. And this tree that was on the beach, basically from the parking lot, you walk up to the beach, and this is like within a 2-minute, less than that, within like the first minute of walking, you could see this tree along the shoreline of Lake Michigan. And I remember kind of seeing it and going, okay, I'm not here to just paint a single tree. I got to go and into the woods and look around in the woods and along that trail. But as I just mentioned, that wasn't very successful. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go back to that single tree and do this sort of distant portrait of the tree. And there was something very interesting to me about the way that it's isolated on the shoreline. I mean, even in the photograph, you can kind of see it's surrounded by a few trees, but there's nothing that is, there's nothing there that really competes with the tree in person, right? And so sometimes you find a subject where it already holds that quality that you want to portray, and other times you really have to be creative with the way that you're composing and creating hierarchy in your composition, right? Where it's like, okay, depending on the size of the tree, it's going to give a different effect with the relationship to the viewer. So you're playing with scale, you're playing with the relationships of proportion and all that kind of stuff. But here, I was like, everything I need is already right there in front of me. I just have to kind of preserve what I'm looking at. So it became a lot of fun to just do this alla prima, fairly accurate depiction of this tree. That was my goal or my intention with this painting. So it's a very thin, kind of smooth painting, and I'm really sad because I didn't remember during the exhibition to get a better photo of the painting. So this is the one painting in the slideshow whose photograph is taken with my cell phone. But because of that, the nuances of the colors are kind of lost, I feel like. You can definitely get a sense of the painting, but it's not quite as soft as it is in person. And this was a painting that some of the artists in the show commented on, which was it's always fun to see what kind of gets a reaction from the artists or the patrons. But this was one that I think a lot of people were surprised to see based on the feedback that I was given. But this painting, because it's so simple in so many ways, I think it allows the tension or the intensity in the painting to come from the very nuanced shifts in warm to cool or bright to dark or soft to sharp, like those spectrums of differences. That is where the painting has a lot of very subtle tension in the work. And I think because we also have these thin lines in the painting, I'm hoping it's coming through in the presentation here, but if I zoom in a little bit more, you can kind of see this tree. It had this very organic, obviously it's a tree, so it's organic, but it had this very haphazard organic balance between foliage and branches, and it had this awkward kind of shape to it. Like, it just reminded me of being a teenager for some reason, and just you're not quite, you're not a full tree, but you're not this little sapling tree either, and you're kind of in this weird growing phase. So the painting is called New Growth, and that wasn't a title or an idea that I thought of. It was something that a bystander or somebody who was passing by while I was painting had kind of mentioned when they saw my painting, they were like, "Oh, that's a cool painting, and it's such a cool tree. It's, it's cool to see the new growth," and that's what she had said. And I thought, oh, okay, that's a term I've never really heard people say before, and it stuck with me. So that was kind of easy to commit to the title for that painting. So this was a painting that was like early afternoon, and it was a very clear day. So the lighting was really direct and really clean, and it allowed for the color in the grass, the color in the tree, the color in the water to be really vivid. So studying the color relationships was really fun for me in this process of the painting. Excuse me while I get some more coffee here. It's a 12-inch by 12-inch painting, and let's see if we can, and if there's anything else I can remember to share by looking at this photo here. You can kind of see my palette. I started out by actually using my color chart book that I've talked about in some of my past streams. And I was flipping through the book trying to really identify and compare like which type of blue I saw in the sky, what type of green I was seeing in the grasses versus the tree, how the water color shifted in temperature and in value. So I was trying to save myself a lot of time and really use this tool that I spent so much time making in the color charts, and use that to recognize or identify within my palette how I could achieve some of the colors that I was observing. So that helped save a lot of time, and you can kind of see the residue of that on my palette. So I mixed up probably 7 or 8 different base colors and blocked in the painting, and then I was sort of dipping into more specific piles of pigments on my palette to shift, to do very small shifts off of that base palette. And it's something that I probably should do more of now that I say that. I think it really helped organize my process and keep things pretty streamlined, which was nice. So that really helped a lot early on in the process. And something that kind of occurred later on, as I said, initially it was a pretty clear sky, and then there were a few clouds kind of just gently rolling across the horizon. And I had noticed, because I was doing kind of this small section here of the view, these clouds that were above me really weren't in my field of vision at all. So I couldn't incorporate, those sort of shapes or lines in the composition. And honestly, I didn't want to. That was something that I liked about this study of the tree, is that it really was about the tree. It wasn't about, the water and the clouds and that kind of stuff. But I noticed like an hour into the painting that there were these distant kind of pink clouds floating miles and miles and miles away over the water. So that was fun to kind of suggest some of those pink warm clouds you can kind of see in the photo from my camera on my phone. But that's probably the one area in my image here that I'm like, I don't feel like that's quite as accurate as it felt in person looking at the painting. But I can't photograph the painting anytime soon because it's now in a private collection. So huge thank you to the collectors who bought this painting during the exhibition on Friday. I didn't catch the name of who bid on that painting, so I think the school is going to send a follow-up with the names of those collectors. So then I'm trying to remember, Monday, I didn't have either of my 2 sign-up locations. So Monday was the first full day that I had to myself, and it allowed me to really just go and try to get a few paintings going, if not finished, to alleviate some of the stress that comes with doing these kinds of events. So because you have the Tuesday deadline for one painting, that adds a little bit of, I think, pressure to not waste any time and to really figure out what you want to do. But also for me, like my own philosophies with plein air painting lately has been rooted in this idea of kind of stumbling upon your subject and trying hard not to go out with the idea of a painting in mind, and rather just be open to the idea that paintings will find you. And if you're exercising your knowledge of things like composition and drawing and relativity, whether that's colors or temperature or value or, chroma, all that stuff. Anything can become an interesting painting at that point. So, I sort of, admitted that part of what I've been interested in, though, is this organic kind of subject, these groupings of trees, these sort of forest scenes. That's something that I really want to keep looking for. So that's about as far as I thought in terms of my subject matter for the event this year. But because of that, it ends up leaving the door pretty open, where you drive around thinking I just have to find a forest, right? And there's forests all over Door County, but sometimes you pull over and you start walking around and you feel like what you want isn't there, and you have to keep driving. So during events, that gets really risky with your schedule, and you have to be careful not to get sort of distracted by this idea that your best paintings are going to come out of finding the right subject. I don't think that's true at all. And saying that is something that I'm trying to instill in myself by saying that out loud, right? Like as a reminder that if you just get out of your car and you just start walking, and whether you have a viewfinder in your sketchbook or you're just looking around, you'll find something that can become a point of interest for you. And that's really the most important thing. It's not about making a painting that a patron is going to love, or a gallery is going to love, or a judge is going to love, or your friends are going to love. You have to love it, right? So I think that's difficult, because you're telling yourself, I don't care what anyone else is going to think about this painting, and I'm just going to go out and make a painting for myself. It feels very counterintuitive during an event like this, because that people are going to see it, that collectors are going to see it, a judge is going to see it, your peers are going to see it, your hosts are going to see it. So it's easy to get kind of distracted or to feel pressure from that side of the cerebral process of making paintings at events. So anyway, Monday for me was kind of a very balanced day, I would say. I got out in the morning. I started that truck painting that I was really, really happy with. I was very excited about that painting. So that alleviated some of the pressure right away, which was nice, because I didn't paint at all on Sunday. So I kind of felt like I lost half a day a little bit by getting up there so late on Sunday. And I felt like I had some time I needed to make up for. So between that painting, the tree painting, I felt like, okay, I can relax. I have 2 paintings already figured out. One of them is already done, so I don't have to worry about Tuesday. And now I can kind of slow down, take my time, and really find something that I'm going to love for some of my larger canvases. So the first of the large canvases, is this 24 by 24 inch panel. This is, again, an oil painting here, and I'm just going to take a second, actually, just to double check something here with the stream. So if you just give me one moment here. I just wanted to check. Okay, I think we're good. So anyway, it's been a while since I've done a live stream, so every time I do this again, I'm like, are things working properly here? So, okay, back to the presentation. So, Monday, must have been around 4 or 5 o'clock. I wanted to, again, find this forest scene. That was something I'm like, that's the one kind of subject I really wanted to kind of find and just spend time in a forest painting trees. And, luckily for me, my hosts that I've been paired with the last 3 years now, they have this very long driveway in Ephraim, and on both sides of the driveway are just these forests of trees. And I kind of knew that, going into the event, they have this long driveway of trees. I knew that Newport Beach had a bunch of forests, so I had options. And on Monday, because I didn't find anything at Newport Beach, I was a little bit frustrated, and I was like, maybe I should just kind of play it safe and go back to my host's property and just see if there's a view in their woods that I would like. So that's what I did. I ended up going back to their house, and had some food, and brought all of my gear out to this spot that's like 20, maybe 25 feet off of their driveway, and within a quarter mile of their house. So it was a very convenient location in case I needed a bathroom or to get water or to get more food. And because it's a large painting, this was something that I was trying to be really mindful of, that like there's a lot of time that's going to go into this painting, and to have those amenities is going to be, really important. So as we can see, I ended up focusing on a section of this part of their property here. And I liked this section of the trees because there was a lot of kind of like negative space around the trees. And it allowed me to think more about the composition in terms of areas of really dense information versus more open areas of, visual reprieve or breathing room, to allow the eye to kind of settle and slow down a little bit. And there's something exciting about painting repetitive shapes like trees, because you find this sense of repetition or rhythm in the composition. So I'm always thinking about distances, whether that's a vertical distance or a horizontal or a diagonal distance between different points, and the amount of time it takes for the eye to travel between those points. And when something feels interesting in this type of situation, it typically results or relates to this idea of timing and pacing and distance between those points of interest. So, I decided to do something that to me, it felt a little bit risky, which is putting one of those trees right in the middle of the composition. And I kind of like trying things like that because it forces me to then figure out how am I going to keep the eye engaged in the composition when there's this sort of central subject or this central element that wants to keep drawing the eye and pulling it back to the middle of the composition. So my solution was to really think about the distances of other things and other areas of the trees between those trees, or where they became more of a cluster and a grouping, to really pay attention to the shapes on the horizon of the forest. There was kind of an open prairie type of area behind the trees, so that became a point of interest for me too, where the light would come in and really brighten up the prairie and intensify a lot of that kind of neon green color. So for me, that became kind of the focal area after a while. It was more about this horizontal line and the way that the vertical trees broke or interrupted that line in the composition. So I spent about 2 hours blocking in the painting. It's hard to photograph a painting like this where it really becomes this amalgamation of time and this Frankenstein of time where, the light comes through the trees with this raking angle of light, and you end up catching these moments of intensity on the trees. So the first session, I was starting to think about where do I want the glowing, illuminated, dappled light to happen in this scene, because the light moved around a lot throughout the 2 hours that I was painting. So I was sort of imagining, okay, I could put some of those shapes in these areas, and I would catch them as they were falling on that part of the landscape or on those areas of the trees. And this is where it ended up after that first session. So then that's how I ended Monday. So I felt pretty good after that first day, and I had a couple things in progress. I felt like that forest scene could really become pretty dense with information and really exciting in its areas of nuance, and with more time it could become layered and have this really rich history. So I felt really good that I had that blocked in and I could work on it at least 2 more days during the week. Now the next day, on Tuesday, I had my first paint out that I had signed up for, and I picked this this place, or this venue, I guess you could call it. It's kind of a preserve area. I think they have classes here, but it's called Bjorklanden. and it's in Bailey's Harbor, which is on the east side of the peninsula. So Ephraim is on the west side, and to get to Bailey's Harbor, it was probably about 16 or 20 minutes to get there. And Tuesday was the one day out of the week that had pretty poor weather. It was forecasted to be cloudy and to have periodic not thunderstorms, but rain, just heavy rain throughout the day. Or heavy rain doesn't feel accurate either. It was just raining a lot throughout the day. There was a chance of rain. I don't know why that's so hard for me to describe, but the forest here, again, as I've been saying, something I've been really interested in is painting trees and these family portraits of trees almost, and trying to capture some of the character in shape or in line of these different trees. And there's a lot of spruce and cedar trees up in Door County, and I found out that this is actually the area that has, in Wisconsin anyway, I think it's the area with the most southern boreal forest, which is very, native to Canada. And it was kind of cool to hear about how the forest bed and the species of trees vary in boreal forests, and where you could kind of see the edge of that forest before it shifted into, I think, more conifer trees, or from conifer to deciduous trees. And that's about as much as I can remember from what someone shared with me. So I'd have to read up on that to say anything else. But that was really fun to learn about and to start to notice as I was painting. And this was probably one of the more eventful days of the week because of the weather and the rain. I was scheduled to paint here from 11 to 2, like anyone else who signed up to paint. I guess every location is a 3-hour session, so it's always from 11 to 2, and they have 2 different locations running during that time every single day from Monday through Thursday. So this was my first session, and with the rain, it really kind of got in the way of my process in more ways than I predicted. And I knew that this was going to be a challenge. I knew that this was going to be different. I've become kind of a fair weather painter, as we say in the plein air community, where you avoid really cold days or really wet days, super hot days. But typically when the weather is extreme like this, you end up getting to paint things that are really interesting still. So the atmosphere and the kind of muted softening of the forms and the views along this part of the lakeshore were really beautiful and really interesting. And even though I didn't paint the shoreline, I painted this small section of the trees. That was something that caught my eye pretty early on. Oh, I'm noticing there's a comment here in the chat from my friend Gigi. Hey Gigi, how's it going? Gigi's asking me how I handle cloudy days. So for me, most of the time when I'm painting, I don't really use an umbrella unless it's really, really sunny and I'm out in the open, or if it's raining like this. And I actually prefer to paint in cloudy or during cloudy days sometimes, because the light is very, very consistent. A lot of times you'll notice on sunny days in the mornings, this isn't a general catch-all rule, but to me it feels like the morning light is a little bit cooler, and the evening kind of, late afternoon light is a little bit warmer typically. So, on an overcast day, it feels like the temperature of the light is pretty consistent. At least to me, that's how it feels. So I like that aspect of it, because I can really focus in on painting the specific details of something and getting really, really kind of analytical about what I'm painting, where it's really trying to capture a likeness of the subject. So that was really helpful about painting on this day during the week, because the light really didn't change very much. But with the rain, I had 2 umbrellas with me, and as you can see, I had these clamps like ready to go to hook up my umbrella. But the larger umbrella that I brought with me decided to just totally, lose function, for lack of a better term. The the umbrella is a vintage umbrella, so I kind of deserve this sort of unreliability in my tools. But as Gigi is pointing out, comfort is a huge factor, and you're totally right about that. I think having to not worry about things like water or sunburn or wind, any of those variables that you can cut out and try to control is really going to allow you to focus on everything you have to worry about in the painting. So in this painting, I struggled a lot because I was dealing with the water and dealing with my umbrellas not really functioning properly. It just wouldn't stay open. That was the problem. The little like clip that comes out and catches the round part of the sliding piece of umbrellas that you push it up and it's supposed to come back down and catch that little lip. That little lip didn't want to stay open, basically. So I didn't have a solution. So I just used my smaller umbrella, which didn't really cover my palette. It was able to keep the painting dry, which was the most important thing, but my palette was getting soaked with water, and traditional oils and water do not mix at all. So the water just kind of kept interrupting my mixtures. It was making it hard for my brushes to pick up the paint, and just kind of threw off my rhythm and my mojo, I guess, as a painter. And it's a problem that I haven't dealt with in years. Like, I haven't painted in like heavy rain like that in over 6 or 7 years, I would guess. Gigi is saying it's an Olympic painting mode. It's funny how psychological, how physical, how emotional this kind of painting can feel at times, because you are dealing with so many different factors. And eventually, this day, the rain kind of came and went, and it passed, and it lightened up, and it stayed very overcast. So luckily the lighting didn't change very much, but I stayed past 2 o'clock, I think, until like 4. And again, so on Tuesday, I dropped off the tree painting on Tuesday at like 11 o'clock like 10 o'clock on my way to Bailey's Harbor. So then at 4 o'clock, I packed everything up and headed to Sister Bay for the sunset paint out that they do Tuesday night. So this is in Bjork, London. It's a property that is open to the public. I think I heard that they have like 400 acres of shoreline property, and this main, the main grounds here that has a trail that you can walk, which is where this painting is made. And there was a couple apparently from Chicago who bought the property, and they like together hand built this little chapel that a couple of the artists painted, or actually our friend Beth Ann Hanslick painted kind of inside of the chapel. So she made a really awesome painting that you should try to find maybe on our website or social media, looking through the doorway from like under the awning of the little chapel. But currently it is owned by, I think, Lawrence University, and they operate classes out of there. They do like events and workshops. I think there's like some sort of hotel or something that you can stay at there. So it's pretty cool that it's very public, and it's something that is really unique, I think, for Door County because of this chapel. So it brings in a lot of tourism, and it was a new location for the event. So I signed up because I was just interested and excited to see what this place had to offer for painting subject matter. And it's ironic that I just painted some trees, but so I focused in. You can kind of see on this section of the view, there's a second tree that's just out of the frame here in my photo. It would be like right about here. So I did kind of this like scaled back fisheye, almost like fisheye kind of view, but of the trees. So then in Sister Bay, I got there at like 5:30, I think, and it was hard to remember at what time we were supposed to start painting, but they are really flexible, the event organizers. They allow us to get there at any time we want on Tuesday, but we have to be there from like, I think it's like 5 to 7 or 6 to 8. And then we set up our easels with little clip lights that they provide, or we can use our own clamp lights. And we set them up on the lawn of the Door Hotel, which is in Sister Bay. And it works out really, really well, actually, because the area where we're painting is kind of like along the harbor by the parks that they have there, and it's right off of the water, but it's before the main road where there's restaurants and hotels and just different things for tourists. So we're painting kind of on the shoreline, and then we walk over to the hotel and set everything up. And it's a really smooth operation. Everything about this event is really impressive when you think about the size of the staff at the school and what they're able to accomplish in this 1 week with all of the different things that they have to juggle and to set up and all that stuff. But anyway, in Sister Bay, I got there, and the last 2 years, this part of the event has always been really tricky for me. I've struggled to come out of this part of the event with a painting that I really like, and I don't know if it's just the location or the time of the day, the fact that I've been painting all day at that point, or if it's the 2-hour window of time. It's become a little bit of a crutch for me lately that like I've spent so much time on my plein air paintings. If I have the time, I'll just keep going back, that I've become very comfortable with that process, that now when I have to make a fast painting, even if the painting feels like, okay, this is done, rarely do I really love the painting. And I think there's something, I'm like growing into this type of painter where the more time I can spend with the subject, the more I love the painting. That sounds like common sense maybe, but it's not that I don't like paintings that are fresh and immediate and gestural and have that ephemeral quality about them. As a painter, it's just something that I want to be thinking about and pursuing in my work. It's like I really want to understand this subject as much as possible. It's a weird, like, obsessive thing I think I'm growing into, which I can't tell if that's good or bad, but that's just kind of the direction I'm going towards right now with my work. And it's kind of, honestly, it's making me feel like maybe the events aren't really conducive for my process right now. Like maybe I need to take a step back and just sort of see what can happen if I just pursue my own work with my own schedule. What kind of paintings could I make? Because it's a lot to do events like this. You have to organize your traveling, you have to organize your materials, you have to actually get there and then do the event. And typically it's like for me, if it's a 1 week event, it's usually a 2 week or 2.5 week commitment out of my calendar, because I have to make all of my panels, I have to make all of my frames. I say the word make, I say the word have. I don't have to do all that stuff, but I choose to, and because of that, it takes a lot of time. So it's a lot to participate in these events, whether they're more local or if they're out of state. And it's hard. I don't always love the paintings as much as I think I could love them. So it's a bittersweet feeling sometimes. But anyway, that has nothing to do with this painting in Sister Bay, really. So I was walking around here. I ended up I ended up kind of over on this pier. You can kind of see it in the photo. They have like probably 20 of these different docks and piers along the harbor. So you have a lot of options on things you can paint. A lot of artists were painting kind of in the park because it still looked like it was going to rain. And because of this day, I think everyone that I talked to on my walk getting to this spot where I painted, all of the artists that I saw kind of shared the same sentiment. I think everybody was feeling a little bit defeated and a little bit just like tired of dealing with the weather and dealing with the rain. Whether you were at a paint out during that morning or if you were just doing your own thing during the day, the weather really kind of took the wind out of people's sails, is what I gathered from those quick conversations that I had with people. Just because Sunday and Monday were bright, warm, sunny days, like you kind of got used to that, and then to have this one day in the week that was the total opposite, and it was kind of cold. It kind of threw a wrench into people's momentum, I think. But anyway, I enjoyed this composition a lot in this painting. The execution, I think, could have been a lot better, just for my own kind of standards. But this is the painting here. And what happened was I walked along that pier. I thought I was going to maybe do a painting of a boat, or like the water reflecting a boat, maybe the bluff off in the distance. And as I was coming back towards the entryway of the dock, I saw this little stairwell, and I liked the color of these wooden, this like little wooden pier that was added on here, because it contrasted this like violet color of the metal. And I was going to maybe do a painting that incorporated this corrugated metal that was like the retaining wall of the pier. I liked those shapes, and I liked the contrasts in values and that kind of stuff. So that's really what caught my eye initially. And then when I came over here to look at it from this side, I saw this diagonal. Even standing up, you kind of get this like swooping effect of the diagonal from foreground towards the lighthouse and then the water. And to enhance that effect, I sat down and thought this could be a really cool vantage point if I'm looking kind of at eye level towards the edge of the pier and then towards the horizon of the water. So I liked that it created this really large dramatic foreground in the composition. And again, I don't know if it really worked out, in the best possible way for the initial idea. I think it could have been done better, but again, if you only have 2 hours, you can't be too critical on yourself and with your process. You have to just sort of make something and then move on and just try to take what you can from that process or from your results and keep moving. So we set up our paintings. They gave us these sandwiches that were catered in that were really good, and just had a few minutes to kind of chat with people before it eventually kind of started to rain again. So we quickly packed everything up and we left at about probably 8:45 or 9 o'clock. So then it was Wednesday. So then Wednesday, I think I had one, I'm trying to remember now if it was Wednesday or Thursday, that I had my second paint out that I signed up for. And I started the day back at Bailey's Harbor because it was kind of cold and rainy all day Tuesday, and then Wednesday it was going to be partially cloudy, and eventually it was going to be sunny again, and it was supposed to warm up again. But because I knew that the morning was still going to be overcast, I decided that I wanted to keep developing this painting in Bailey's Harbor because it didn't feel like it was quite finished enough. And it was a painting that I still am a little bit on the fence with, because most of the paintings that I've been making in plein air, there's a clear distinction in space between background information and foreground information. And I've really become interested in that relationship between that space between the two, and how sort of shallow that space is, or how vast that space is. And if I'm doing a portrait of a tree, that's sort of the section of the trunk, if you feel like you're really close up to the tree, the background feels really far away, right? Or in the last painting in Sister Bay, if the foreground takes up so much of the composition, that pushes the background information into this really thin horizon, that horizon then feels farther away. But in this painting, it didn't feel like that relationship between background and foreground was dramatic enough, maybe, or differentiated enough for me. So I went back thinking maybe I'll find a way to pull the foreground forward more by adding in more information, or pull the eye more towards the background information in the upper right corner. And I kind of ended up doing both, and it just that sense of space never really was resolved for me. So that's something that I felt like I learned a lot in making this painting, but I don't know if it's one that I totally hit the mark with. But anyway, it's something that I'm glad I tried, and this is one too where maybe if I had a month to work on it, maybe then it would get to that point where it's like, okay, I know what this painting is trying to do. But in my head, it's almost like paintings, they're on this meter of like, you start the painting and it's really early, there's a lot that has to be figured out. And then you start to realize what you're trying to do in the painting. And then eventually you try to get to that point where it's like, okay, this thing, the painting, it found its direction, it found its idea, its purpose and intention, and it got there. Or it went even beyond that point, and I pushed it to this new territory where it was really exciting. So it was successful, and it was, revealing in something that you didn't think you were going to experience or encounter or understand. So in my head, there's like that meter with every painting that I work on. And this one, I think, kind of got stuck in that middle area where it's like, I didn't commit to something enough to where I could keep pushing it. But it's finished, and it's one that was really fun to push myself with. And it's hard to tell in the photo here, but the one aspect of this painting that I felt like was really different for me was the amount of texture and impasto that the painting has. It didn't sell, so I still have this painting, and it's 12 by 12 inch painting. The foreground especially has a lot of thick, blobs of paint. I probably could have pushed that even more. You can kind of see it in the lighting in the first image here on the left, how the light is kind of catching those little ripples of paint. But I also incorporated some of that in the background too. So it's kind of, again, it's sort of, there's that competing quality and space and depth in this painting still. So anyway, it is available. If you like the painting and you want to purchase the painting, feel free to reach out. Depending on when you're watching this, it might still be available. But either way, I can give you that information. What you'll notice in the higher quality photo that I took with my DSLR camera, there was a lot of variety and color in this painting too. So I started really pushing the saturation the second day, just really committing to more creative color choices Wednesday morning. So that was a lot of fun to push some of that stuff too in the painting. And then Wednesday, let's see. So I think I was here until, it must have been until like 11 or something. And Wednesday must have been my second, I think Wednesday was my second sign-up day, because I went to Sturgeon Bay. So I started in Bailey's Harbor, then I drove down to Sturgeon Bay, which was like a 30-minute drive from Bailey's Harbor, and I had my 11 to 2 o'clock session. I did this little, like, muted, not achromatic, but fairly muted painting looking at the bridge in Sturgeon Bay, one of the main sort of drawbridges in Sturgeon Bay. And didn't really like the painting. I didn't like how it turned out. It was a little 8 by 8 inch painting. I was trying to save myself some time and pressure by going really small, and wasn't really able to pull off what I was trying to pull off in that painting. So I ended up just wiping off that panel, because I'm at the point with events now where I don't bring extra panels, I don't bring extra frames, and sometimes that's a detriment, I think, to my process and to what ends up happening during the events. But it also, on the other hand, it kind of encourages me to be very particular about the paintings that I end up making, and at what point is this object something that's worthy of being in a gallery or being in a show or being part of, my portfolio as an artist. So I kind of like that there's that restrictive quality of experimenting and being really intentional and just really trying to be focused in the process. But I have to be aware of when that's sort of slowing me down or getting in the way creatively. But anyway, I made the decision to just wipe the painting off, and then I had to pick up artwork from the Miller Art Museum from a group show that I was in earlier this summer with a bunch of Wisconsin artists. I think I talked about that in one of the other live streams, but if I didn't talk about it or you missed it, then just a real quick recap of that show. It was me, Mark Anderson, Shelby Keefe, Stephanie Lord, and Brian Sindler. So it was a 5-person plein air painting show, and it was up until I think the 7th of July or 6th of July. So I was in Spain with Megan at that time and wasn't around to pick up my paintings. But Helen, the curator at the Miller, was really accommodating and really sweet and just allowed me to pick up all of my work during the plein air festival. So Wednesday was the day that I did that because I was already in Sturgeon Bay. So that was part of my afternoon. It was like probably a 45-minute hour section of my afternoon on Wednesdays. So after I picked up those, then I went up to Ephraim and started working on my tree painting again. So Tuesday was a really kind of busy, odd day, and then Wednesday kind of became sort of a busy, odd day with just different things that I was trying to get done. Actually, also on Wednesday, on my way back from Sturgeon Bay, I think I left Sturgeon Bay at like, it must have been like 2:30 or 3 o'clock, or maybe, yeah, somewhere around there. I was chatting with a friend of mine. I do see Gigi's comment. I'm gonna answer that here in a quick second. But on my way back from Sturgeon Bay, I stopped to see these really cool cabins from a friend of mine, Ed. His family, his like great grandfather built these cabins in Door County, decades ago. And I'm seeing Mark. Hey, Mark. I'm seeing Mark Anderson's comment about tacos too. I did get some tacos in Sturgeon Bay, so that added like half an hour to my day on Wednesday as well. So, yeah, I think most of the week in Door County for me was just it felt really jam-packed, and then it went by really fast. So compared to the last 2 years, this year just flew by. But it was a really good week too. There were a lot of like new things that got to happen, like seeing Ed's family cabins. So I got to see those in Fish Creek on my way back to Ephraim to work on this forest painting. So that was kind of my schedule on Wednesday. And Mark was asking about these tacos. So Mark Anderson is another painter that was in the event with me this year. It was both of our third years in the show. And actually we painted together in Sturgeon Bay at that location looking at the drawbridge. Kind of similar, definitely the same sort of section of the view, but different compositions, which was kind of cool to see. But the whole time we were painting, we were next to this taco truck that was like 20 feet away, and we were downwind. So for 3 hours, all we were doing was just, getting more and more hungry, thinking about tacos. And so after I wiped off my painting and got my van and reparked it, I went and got a plate of tacos and sat there for like 30 minutes, just sort of decompressing before I went to go pick up my paintings at the Miller. And now everyone knows the rest of the schedule that day. And let me go back to Gigi's comment. She was asking, are you in an oil wave or do you bring gouache too? So I would say I'm definitely in kind of an oil only mode for events lately. I don't know if that's just because gouache feels more fragile, maybe. I've also been doing some casein painting, which is similar to gouache, but I don't like casein for events because it dries out really fast on your palette, whereas gouache reactivates really easily, so it's really, flexible and conducive for quick paintings or stopping and going on a painting. But I also haven't done large gouache paintings. And painting on paper that's mounted to wood panels, it feels fragile to me. Like if I accidentally bump the edge of the panel, like the paper could like raise up on the edge, or if something fell on the painting, it could rip the paper. So I just try to play it safe by going with oils because it's a little bit more, reliable in terms of its physical properties. I think there's something about that headspace though too of jumping between a really fast drying medium and a very slow drying medium that I'm trying my best to just pick one or the other and not try to juggle those different modes of making. Because during events, for me, I get in this, I think all of us, we get in this sort of like this rhythm of painting where you don't have to kind of worry about certain things after you've had a break from painting. I think all of us feel that kind of rustiness where we have to just like remember what it feels like to mix the colors and to like, be juggling all of these variables in our minds. And during an event, you hit this point where it just feels like second nature. So much of what you're doing is just muscle memory after a little while, and you're warmed up, is what people typically will say at shows. So jumping between mediums, I think for me it feels kind of risky to do that now. So for this show, I just brought all oil paintings. I also was thinking about that too, because I was like, maybe I could bring paper panels that are the size of these paintings, just in case something didn't work out. I could pop a gouache painting in there or a casein painting in there instead as like a backup if something didn't work out. So the reason I didn't do that though is because I was already thinking, this shows you how much of an overthinker I am. I was already thinking like, but what if I had two paintings and I loved both of them, but I only had one frame, right? It's like, I don't want to do that to myself where I pick a painting, it goes in a show and it doesn't sell or it doesn't get an award. And I was like, I have this other painting that's the same size that I love and I wish I would have just done that one. And I'm like, just avoiding those internal conflicts by just picking one medium. That's the level that I had thought about the gouache oil, what to pack, what to prepare for question. So that was a really good question, Gigi. Okay, now I'm trying to remember Wednesday after I worked on the forest painting, which I actually didn't talk about here. This is after the second session. So you can see it changed quite a bit, actually. If I scroll back for a moment here, you can see that's where it ended up after the first couple hours. You can kind of see where I was starting to visualize areas of dappled light, warming up pockets of the trees. There was a lot of really nice temperature contrast that I thought was going to be kind of the point of the painting. And then going into the second session, I started to follow that again. And I made a couple of moves in the painting where it felt like I kind of screwed it up, to be honest with you. And I felt like I lost kind of that control of what I was trying to do in the painting. Part of it was because it's such a large surface and I was working on small paintings. I think that kind of threw me off a little bit. And I hit a point where I did not love the arrangement of those temperature contrasts. And part of it's hard because I started working on this again at like 5 o'clock. So after seeing Ed's family cabins, then I drove to Ephraim and I just immediately went and set everything up at like 5 o'clock. And I was starting to get to this, I was starting to feel that like that worry and doubt again because, Monday was such a great day. Tuesday kind of threw everything off. And then Wednesday, I kind of woke up on Wednesday like, okay, I have a list of things I want to try to do today. And I hope I can just, I hope everything flows really well. And I hit a couple of those bumps, like in Sturgeon Bay with that painting I started and didn't like. That kind of threw me off a little bit. And then I got the food and picked up the paintings. And I was starting to feel this like anxious, like I only have a day and a half left to finish all of my paintings. I was starting to kind of feel stressed out. And so I just went right to this location at like 5 o'clock, which was earlier than I was doing most of the painting the first session. So the lighting wasn't the same. That's the point of that long little tangent there. And so because of that, I think I was starting to paint what was in front of me and not what was there the last session. And that kind of screwed up the painting. And then I really started to panic. Like I was like really struggling for like 45 minutes, feeling a lot of stress and worrying like, is this going to work out? Am I losing this painting? Is this not even going to be the painting on this panel? Am I going to end up picking a totally different subject and just paint over this? And that's where I was starting to get in this process. And I thought, I'm just going to do something that is going to break the surface of the painting, metaphorically, right? Like I'm going to do something that's going to shift the arrangement of things, the feeling of things in this painting and see what happens. I've done this a lot in studio work, but rarely have I done this with a plein air painting. So it felt a little scary to tell you the truth. And I had brought some, like I have this like wedge tool. It's kind of a squeegee, kind of a palette sort of type of like wedge silicone tool that you can use to push paint around. And I had that with me and I thought I'm just going to smear whatever's on the painting. So there was fresh paint that I had just applied Wednesday, during this session. There was semi-dry paint still from Monday's session. And then there was a lot of paint that was already dry. So it was kind of cool because the paint was mixing and moving in a lot of different kinds of ways. I think sometimes if you're using that tool, or like a squeegee or a brayer or a big palette knife, when all of the paint has the same tackiness or wetness, everything feels more uniform, you know. But if you have a painting that's semi-sticky or dry with wet paint on top that you're moving around, it's catching in these like surprising ways, and it's really organic, the types of marks and layers that you end up building into the painting. So I immediately felt this relief, because after I started just like, you know, with little thought, honestly, in the direction I was pushing the paint and the marks that were being made, I was just trying to get rid of what I was seeing in the painting and my memory of the painting, and I wanted to see something else. So, you know, it isn't super drastic or super different, but it's enough where it started to feel like a different painting. And what happened is, through those layers of basically squeegee, you know, kind of drags and pulls and these like semi-transparent, layers of paint, it built up this atmosphere in the painting that allowed me to think more about that relationship of depth again, where it like things along the horizon all of a sudden felt like they were a mile away, and the foreground felt like it was right in front of me, and I could really push and start to tweak the distance between those things, or just the shapes in between those areas of depth too. So all of these trees then became really malleable. If they felt more malleable, like I could then play with how much of the tree do I depict, how much do I sort of cover and hide, you know, how do I want to incorporate some of the branches that I was seeing to kind of lead the eye through and between all of these trees, the positive space, the negative space. There was a really cool ghosting effect that started to happen in some of the trees, as we can see, like because I was dragging the color of the grass in that prairie over some of the trees, it kind of it created this like fleeting quality in a lot of the shapes, and it started to create a lot of depth and atmosphere where I could go back over that again, and I could carve those trees back out if I wanted to, or I could leave it how it was, and it felt more like this fleeting, ephemeral, you know, sort of ghostliness in the painting in some of those sections and areas. So it all of a sudden took this 180 turn and became like my favorite painting of the week at that point. And I think I just needed to feel that sense of flexibility in the painting where I could do whatever I wanted, and I didn't have to just worry about accuracy in depicting the subject. You know, I had painted that singular tree as like, you know, as representationally as I could, and I felt like I was trying to do that in this larger painting, but there was, you know, stuff that wasn't working. So this reminded me like, hey, painting can be more, you know, intuitive and improvisational and experimental and more exploratory, right? Where it's not so much about like, I have to control this process and I know what I'm going to make. And we're always painting on that spectrum of control and chance and, you know, uncovering or discovering something that you didn't think, or you couldn't have predicted, you know? So all of these moments that are really gestural and essentially bring out the beauty of abstraction, you know, this sort of non-objective language of shapes being sharp or soft or big or small or solid or transparent. Like all of those, that alphabet of abstraction kind of shines through now, and it's not so much about the tree, it's not so much about the light, it's not so much about the depth, it's about the quality of the shapes and the marks and the colors and the nuance of greens that I was starting to see. And I could pick and choose a couple moments then that could draw the eye and kind of pull us into a moment that feels maybe more poetic, or it feels more specific. And that built up this really, you know, important and necessary relationship between the general information and the explicit information. I think there's something about those types of relationships that I really need to find in my process to feel like I'm on the right path. And I think this goes back to that meter kind of metaphor that I was talking about earlier, where all of a sudden I felt like I hit that meter and it was just like going off, just going crazy. And at the same time, the painting felt incredibly open-ended, and that weight on my shoulders of pressure, feeling like I had to get this painting, it has to be my best painting and it has to be great because it's a large painting and it's going to take up a lot of space on the wall and it takes a lot of time. All of that just like disappeared and it became its own thing. Like, I think that's what's funny about paintings like this, is that they eventually become their own thing and they tell you what they are trying to be. It sounds hippie-ish and wacky and weird to say it like that, but it kind of feels that way, where you're kind of like, okay, painting, I see where we're going, and like you're letting go of some of that control, and it breaks the process in a really healthy way. And I'm grateful for that moment. I think for me, when I think about the event this year, this one moment is my takeaway from the festival. It reminded me that I need that idea or that process. It has to be like available to me all the time. I have to remind myself, like, you don't have to control every little thing you're trying to do, and you're going to find something really interesting if you can be more forgiving with yourself, or if you can be more flexible with your process. So this was the moment, I think, that I had this like beyond plein air, beyond the festival, beyond Door County, like this breakthrough in my process that made the event for me what it is and what it was. So it was really cool. And I know it's kind of a long story, but that image, that photo, is kind of the representation of that experience that I went through on Wednesday. And it just allowed me to kind of feel like I could breathe again during the event. So I got to this point in the painting, I thought, it could be done probably here. Like, I think there's enough in the painting that it could hold its own. It has enough, information that is suggestive. It has enough information that is, again, kind of explicit and really specific and telling you what it is, while leaving a lot for interpretation, for the viewer to kind of enter this space and to bring their memory and to bring their ideas and interpretation to what's here. And so I kind of felt like it was already doing that at this point in the painting, but I still had Thursday, so I was thinking, I'm going to sit with this for a day. If I think it needs a little bit more, I'll come back to it. So I think I put it in the frame and brought it into their house and just looked at it inside of like an interior space for a little while. And I was just, that's sometimes what I need to do to be able to see the painting like as an object, as a finished form in space and time, and to ask myself some really hard questions, like, is this what I want to leave with this painting, And that's what everyone talks about, like, how do you know when a painting is done? And honestly, sometimes that's the best way to do it. You put it in a frame, you put it in different contexts, and you try to really analyze objectively what it is. You try to be honest with yourself and ask yourself, like, do I think this is interesting? Do I think that this is worthy of time, which is a deep and kind of weird question, but kind of true question at the same time. So anyway, if you're ever feeling like you're not sure what to do if a painting is done or not, that's honestly one tactic or strategy that might help reveal in a more obvious way if something is working or not working. Because sometimes what happens too is you put it in a frame and you look at it and you go, whoa, this is done. When you kind of thought, like, I have more time I have to put into this, but really it's like this painting is it's beautiful in its simplicity, or it's like, initial depiction of whatever I was trying to paint. So anyway, it can go a variety of different ways once you put it in the frame and see it somewhere else. So then afterwards, I had some food. I think I had picked up a pizza on Wednesday too, if I'm remembering correctly. Yeah, I think it was on Wednesday. I picked up a pizza from Wild Tomato, which was another highlight from the week. I don't have a photo of that, but I ate some pizza, and then I went back out and started to work on a painting. And I wanted to do a nocturne painting. So by Wednesday, I had I had one panel left that wasn't even started, and it was my second largest panel. So I was starting to feel, even though I kind of had that breakthrough with the forest painting, I kind of was still feeling a little bit of pressure because, I only brought 7 or 8, panels and frames. So, I didn't have a ton of work that was already finished or in progress, and I needed to kind of get something on that larger canvas, that second largest canvas. So I thought maybe at this point I should just do a nocturne painting because, you don't have to worry about, like really quickly moving light, changing light. You have hours and hours of consistent light if you work on a nocturne painting. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna just plan on a nocturne painting. And I thought I really want to go up to Gills Rock again and see what that looks like at night, because I don't think I ever went there for a nocturne the last year. And during the day, it looks like they have a bunch of like street light kind of lights in their parking lot and by some of the buildings that are there. So I drove towards Gills Rock, and on my way there, I kept seeing all of these little vignette, sort of views along Highway 42 of this really warm, just beautiful raking light coming through on the like right side of everything I was passing. So there were these beautiful, like warm and cool relationships everywhere, and I was just like, maybe I should pull over and do something here. But obviously at like 6, 7, between like 6 and 8 o'clock, the light changes a lot, and that's not a lot of time to begin with. So I knew I'm not going to work on a big painting in those 2 hours, but I had wiped off that small panel from Sturgeon Bay the day before, the day of, this same day. And so I had actually passed this little barn on someone's property. It's right off of 42, kind of between, I think it's before you get to Ellison Bay. If you're heading towards Gills Rock, there's this barn with these 3 trees and this 4th little, like, I don't know the species of these trees. They might be cedar trees, but the bases of these ones look like cedars. This is something else. But anyway, I liked the like repetition of the trees and like their proportions contrast to the building, and the fact that this building is just like kind of on its own along the horizon line with a big prairie field in front of it. And all week, or like, earlier in the week, I passed this and I kept thinking like that would be such a cool painting because it has this like simplicity in the abstract, relationships of shape and color and that kind of stuff. And the problem is that there's no good place to park and really to paint, because once you come off of the highway, you kind of like come down this little hill, and then this is the prairie that's there. But the vantage point from the road is what gives you this like perfect height of placing the trees and the building and the horizon line. Like everything shifts in kind of an awkward way once you're down in the field. Because I went down there and I was like, I don't like it now, because you couldn't see as much of the roof of the building. The trees along the horizon matched up with the building at a different height. And I was like, I only like it from the road. But there was a driveway that looked like it was not well used. And I parked my van there. It's across the street from this area. And I crossed the highway, and I brought my Beats like noise canceling headphones, because you're right off of the highway on the shoulder. There's not a lot of space on the shoulder, and it immediately drops. So my tripod didn't have a lot of space to go into like the ditch. And where am I going with this story? So anyway, I painted this for like an hour or so, maybe 45 minutes, just a really quick block in. I signed it just in case I wasn't going to come back and work on it. And while the paint was wet, because it was very thin paint, it was going to dry pretty quickly. So I tried to sign it while it was still wet. And obviously this is like at the end of the session, so we're not seeing the like warm sunset sky and the color contrasts with the trees. But I ended up coming back and finishing this painting on Thursday, the following day. So you'll see that here in a second. And then I drove up to Gills Rock. So it worked out actually kind of perfectly timing wise that I could find something at like, 7 o'clock to paint, and then I could get to Gills Rock at like 9 o'clock or 9:30. And I ended up having to wait until like 10 o'clock or 10:15 to actually start this painting because there was so much twilight, light in the sky. Excuse me. That I've painted enough nocturnes now to know, like, if you're going to do a nocturne and you're starting at that twilight part of the night, you might as well do something small or work really quick and then stop once the light is gone all the way, because otherwise you're kind of chasing the darkness of what you're looking at. And I've done that with paintings before where they have like 5 layers in the sky because it just keeps getting darker and darker and darker, and then maybe lighter again. And this painting had a little bit of that happening where I ended up having to lighten up, or I'm trying to remember if I think I had to darken the sky a little bit. But you can kind of see some of the view that I was painting in the picture that I brought in. But it's actually more of the foreground, more of the fishing like shop where they process and store a lot of their tools. It's right by those 2 trucks, actually, that I've been painting. And I liked this view because there was this beautiful light coming through the windows of the boat. There was this warm, glowing light of the I don't know if these are like incandescent bulbs, but these warm bulbs, off of the pier where a lot of the other fishing boats and just, residential boats are docked. And so the light is coming through the windows and having these really, subtle atmospheric kind of like gradients of brown to orange. And I thought that would be really kind of a cool focal area, along with the other main lights in the view. So my painting here, it ended up, I think, kind of around this stage. I might have done a little bit more after this photo was taken, but this gives you a good idea of where it was kind of at the end of the process. And I started this painting around 10:15, and I finished it after midnight. I think it was like 12:30 when I packed everything up. So it was a pretty quick painting, and I used a big like 1.5 inch brush for most of it, which this also kind of was its own little breakthrough for me. I've been painting a lot with smaller brushes and really taking my time, but working with a big brush on a larger canvas like this, it reminded me how much fun it is to find, the variety of mark making that one brush can offer, especially a flat brush, because you have 2 corners, you have a nice horizontal at the top of the brush, whereas maybe a filbert or a round, you kind of have less choices for, as you rotate the brush, there's less variety of mark, I think, that you can get. That might be kind of a challenge sort of idea. I could see some artists being like, I could get a lot of different marks out of a round or something, but it's an interesting question. I'd love to hear other painters' thoughts on that idea. Is there one shape in brushes that you go to for finding variety and efficiency when you're painting? Because that was really the key idea in this painting, is that I wanted to do something really quickly. I wanted to just kind of knock this out as fast as possible and be pretty accurate and not really worry about layering semi-transparent paint down on the panel. The other thing that I don't have an image of or a video of to show you, but I can tell you this quick story that stood out with this painting that has nothing to do with the painting itself, that was kind of funny, is that so I got there at like 10:15, or I got to Gills Rock at about 9:15 probably, and there, like I said, there was a lot of light left in the sky, and people were still coming into the harbor here and loading up their boats. But by 10 o'clock, I was the only person in this part of Gills Rock. There was not a car, that was still doing the people were still doing things. The boats were all sort of docked for the night, and it became very quiet. And honestly, it was kind of eerie because it was, way up north in the peninsula. It's not a very populated area. It was really dark. I kind of started to get a little freaked out, honestly, because I was alone, and it was so late in the day and late into the night that I was like, hopefully, no one's here, and no one's going to try to, talk to me or mess with me. And I was like, I didn't even wear headphones because I was afraid I would be like too isolated from someone that could have just like, pulled up. But anyway, after like 25 minutes of painting by myself, I started hearing these weird little sounds, and I was like, is someone like walking in the shadows, like walking up to me, like, or behind me? And it kind of freaked me out. And I would turn around, and I had a little headlamp that I would turn on, and I didn't see anything, and I kept painting, and it happened 2 or 3 times before, I turned around again, and I turned on my headlamp, and then I saw these little glowing eyes, like really low to the ground in the shadows. And I saw a couple of them, and I was like, what the heck is that? And I like moved closer, and all of a sudden I saw these like little weasel like creatures come out of the shadows, and they were like scurrying around, like within a 15-foot radius of where I was painting. And then I saw like groups of 3 and groups of 2, and like felt like there was a whole colony of these little weasels that lived somewhere in the buildings and the shanties or under the boats or somewhere. And apparently they come out, I think they're called martins or what was the other one? It's like stoats. It's either like a stoat or a martin or a mink, based on what people have told me since I've shared the story. And they were all black, so that might be a mink then. But anyway, yeah, there were a ton of these little like creatures, and they kept coming up towards me, and it was starting to kind of freak me out because I was just wearing sandals. I didn't want them to like try to bite my feet or anything. So I was like painting, and I would turn around and be like, I would kind of like scurry them away or kind of yell at them and stuff. And I probably looked insane, but yeah, it was something I did not expect to have happen during this nocturne painting. But they were there because, fishermen come in and they clean their fish and like cut off the heads and get rid of the guts and stuff, but they leave a lot of that like right around the little shack where they clean everything. So seagulls hang out there, but also these little weasels hang out there too. And they feast for like 30 minutes because I only saw them for a little while, and then they like went back to their little nest or whatever. And I didn't see any more. But this is a kind of a better image of the painting. This is taken with my camera. I don't know on your screen like how accurate the values and the colors are. The painting is called Night Watch in Gills Rock. If you're familiar with Rembrandt's paintings, he has this really famous painting called Night Watch, which is a really just kind of, I've never seen the painting in person, so I can't really speak to its like physical properties, but images and reproductions of it, I've seen it. It's a really interesting painting. It's really kind of dramatic. It reminds me of like Game of Thrones, or I should say Game of Thrones reminds me of Rembrandt's painting. But anyway, that's kind of why I called it Night Watch. And it just felt like, I was there like defending things from these weasels, and like it just felt like, it felt like I was protecting this area, not from weasels, but just, you're on this like little edge of a port, and you're looking out at the water, and it was kind of an interesting position to be in on the peninsula at this time of the day. But anyway, I like the photo because it's a lot more subtle and nuanced in showing you some of the relationships of the temperature, relationships of the values. Nocturnes are really difficult to photograph without glare, and this painting had quite a bit of paint. Like in these dark passages, there's like probably like 1/8 of an inch of oil paint there, mostly because I was using pretty transparent pigments like an idiot. I should have been using like more umbers and just pigments that had more of an opacity to them. But a lot of this was mixed with phthalo green, alizarin permanent or alizarin crimson, I think phthalo blue, and raw umber, I think, was a lot of like the dark kind of mixtures in this painting. And then I also used some cadmium orange and cadmium green to get some of those lights popped in there. But yeah, it was a really fun painting to make because it was so quick, and there were a lot of big, simplifications of information. I liked trying to convey the volume of the boat itself and that like lost and found edge or contour of the boat, because everything got so dark that like it was really hard to decipher what I was looking at by like 11 o'clock. And I just continued to group things as I was painting. So that was really fun to do as well. And this painting is 17 inches high by 19 inches wide. It's interesting because if you see this painting in like daylight or really bright light, there's a lot of color and a lot of chroma that you'll find in the painting. But for the most part, in like average lighting situations, it looks very like muted and dark and like low key and kind of moody, which I really like, but I don't know if it really worked in the gallery once it was displayed. So that's something you'll see in a later picture here. But this painting is still available too, actually. So that's how I wrapped up Wednesday. Wednesday was a very long day, as you can tell, and it was a day that had a lot of ups and downs, but probably the most memorable day out of the whole week. So it's kind of fun to reflect on that again. So Door County Fish and Dan's Fish Incorporated, that's the name of this fishing company that I was working by, apparently, because it's right here on the truck. This is the kind of end result of my truck mirror painting that I started on Monday. This kind of felt a little bit risky too, to be honest. Like I was worried that like saving this painting for the last morning. Honestly, actually, I could have worked on this Friday morning too before we dropped off our painting. So I guess that Thursday morning wasn't like the last opportunity to work on this painting, but it worked out. I ended up finishing this over a couple of hours. And actually Mark Anderson was painting a really awesome painting too, over from, it's out of frame, but it's kind of like off this like pier kind of over here. So that was kind of cool that he and I overlapped a lot actually in Door County this year, which I don't think happened as much the last 2 years. But anyway, so this painting, the second session was really about this convex element in the painting. Most of this area was finished. Most of the truck itself was finished. And then the windows, I had to touch up some things. And it's really dark again. I apologize for the lighting here. I wish it was a little bit brighter. Yeah, Mark was following me all week. It was fun. I feel like, I don't know, it's the only bummer of this week was how fast it went by. I felt like maybe because the days were just so jam-packed with, for me anyway, I think by meeting up with like the Miller Art Museum and then Ed, like those types of things I think were different than previous years. So they filled in a lot of time that, maybe I would have been painting or driving or something. But anyway, it just went by really fast. But I really like how this painting ended up Thursday morning. And, there were a couple paintings I think that flowed really well. And I think the commonality between those paintings is that I was just in my own little world, like just jamming out to music. And there's something about being isolated from sounds that I think most painters probably agree with this idea, especially plein air, where you're like out in public, you're out in like the day-to-day life of everyone else. There's a lot of activity that you're trying to like deal with as you're painting and trying to come up with these solutions to problems. And being able to just zone out with music really helped, I think, keep my attention more on the visual side of my senses as opposed to like, the sounds and smells and other things. So that helped a lot with a lot of these paintings. But I have a better image here that I'll just go ahead and skip to because you can't really even see anything. What we can see though is my subject that I was painting. So this photo gives you a better idea of what I was looking at. So this space in the painting is like, I don't know what'll happen if I do this. Oh, it doesn't actually do anything. I was going to like highlight a section of the photo, but that doesn't work on the PDF. So this obviously, as you can see, is kind of like the view I was painting. So I was at kind of an awkward angle, I guess, with the truck, just with how much of the like front end of the truck I was showing. That was probably the hardest part of this painting, was painting this like that sense of contour and foreshortening on that. I guess it's not really foreshortening. It's like the opposite of foreshortening. The perspective of that rounding over and curving around towards the front of the truck. in my painting, for whatever reason, it just didn't feel right to me for a lot of the process. But when I look at the photo, the size of that area to the mirror, it does add up, and it kind of makes sense. I don't know. It's weird to be like, I think I did a good job. I think I nailed it in the painting, but for what the time I had and my skill set, I think it worked out okay. So that's what I'm trying to say. All right, let's keep going. So this is the semi, higher quality image. Again, I haven't actually color corrected things. I think this is probably a little too dark, but you can see more of the detail in the paint handling and the shapes. This was a really fun painting for the geometry in the subject. So everything has a pretty sharp, shape and character and proportion, or like the relationships of those proportions could be broken into more of like mathematical visual language, which I really enjoyed. And it made it more enjoyable to simplify things into like basic building block kind of shape. So the second session, one of my favorite areas was this reflected, kind of, I don't know if there's a term for this type of like reflection, but it's the mirror with the arms being reflected on the window, but the window's not, it's like a weird surface where it's like this very subtle reflective quality. And I liked how really what I was painting was the filtering of value and color property of the inside of the truck. So basically this is where light is not hitting the glass in the same way from the light source, and what I'm seeing into the truck has shifted now. It's like it's more accurate to what's actually there because less light is sort of bouncing off of the window because it's hitting the the mirror anatomy instead. That's the best way I could describe that. That sounded like a mouthful of just extra words, but anyway, I liked that shifting of color property. So it's interesting because it reminds me that like when you're painting something, whether it's a window or water or a glass of water or anything that's like glass and or like translucent or transparent like that, I guess transparent is going to filter the whatever you're looking through, or whatever is being seen through the glass. So it wasn't so much like I mixed up one color and then like painted a glaze over what I had already painted in the window. I had to mix every one of these different little sections of the dashboard, and it was really fun. Like it was something I wasn't thinking about until the second day, and I was noticing it as I was standing there, and I'm like, oh, I should paint that in. And it became kind of a fun exercise in trying to match like the local color of the dashboard, sections, the trees in the horizon, the sky, but then tinting it in the right directions to make it feel like it's the effect of the light or the absence of light on the glass. So it's kind of a cool like thing to look for and maybe just sort of try out as a series for plein air. That might be something I'll kind of keep pursuing. We'll see. The other thing I really enjoyed was the abstract kind of like skewing of reflected shapes and forms as this convex corner really started to like twist and wrap around right before you hit the door. So everything that's reflected there got like smushed and like elongated in really weird and interesting ways. So that was, for me, that was probably one of the more enjoyable parts to paint in this because it was so abstract. It was just about these, like trying to match the shapes and the proportions and really try to find the key, separations between the the little mirror that was being reflected, or areas of the foreground, or the shadow from the mirror of the truck hitting the ground and how that angled because of the skewing of the convex mirror. So there was all of these weird, sort of varieties of light and color and shape that you don't usually see in nature, that it kind of only occurs in these like weird warping moments of light bouncing off and reflecting something else. But the dimensional, makeup of the surface of that reflection is also adding to like the abstraction of the subject. So it was really cool to be able to sit and just notice a lot of that stuff. But anyway, this painting, I'm happy to say, was purchased during the show. There was a couple I met actually at that Miller Art Museum show. Mark and I and Shelby Keefe and Brian Sindler and Stephanie Lord, we had work in this group show, and then we got to do this like panel talk I think that was in June, which was a lot of fun. And there was a couple in the audience there who I met afterwards, and they said they really liked my work, and they were like, we're going to be here for the Plein Air Festival. We can't wait to see what you paint. So I saw them once or twice during the festival too. And then on Friday night, or I think maybe it was on Saturday, they told me that they're the ones who bought this painting, which is really cool. And they said something that I thought was interesting. They were like, yeah, we felt like it was really representative of like your work and like things you've been really trying to pursue in plein air. So it's cool to hear someone say something where it feels like they're following what you're doing, and they're keeping up with experiments that you're trying and different phases of your work. It's always really flattering to hear someone say something like that. So that made me feel really good that they're the ones who bought the painting. All right, we're getting towards the end here. So this is how that forest painting turned out. There wasn't a whole lot that I ended up changing, but since it was in the frame, I thought maybe I'll bring it back out there in the frame, see if it needs anything else, and I can really decide where something, or at what point is it really finished enough. So I ended up popping in a little bit of dappled light up here. I pushed some of the impasto in some of these moments here and here. And yeah, I just did a little bit more painterly things this third session. I didn't use like the squeegee kind of tools or the wedge tool at all. One thing that was kind of a surprise that I haven't really done in any of my plein air work before, but I really had a lot of fun trying this, was picking out something in the foreground that was really like, particular and individualistic, and just like kind of a portrait almost of like one thing in the foreground, because I had this large vacant bottom half of my painting. I felt like maybe I need something to like pull the eye down. So there was this branch. I think you can kind of see parts of it right here. Well, probably not this zoomed out, but you can kind of see parts of the branches that I was noticing where like the light was catching one limb and then the rest would be in shadow, or you could kind of start to see that sense of turning a form where the light was, catching the branch. And it felt like these weird little abstract lines just like floating over the landscape. And I wanted to try to capture some of that. So that's what I ended up doing here in the foreground. And a friend of ours, Beth Ann Moran Hanslick, was saying that she's like, I like that kind of like Andrew Wyeth branch, moment in your painting. I was like, actually, yeah, you're kind of right. It does have an Andrew Wyeth kind of feel, where it's like there's this big open vacant space, and then you have this really distilled like concrete depiction of something really small. So the contrast in the proportions is really, really dramatic and extreme. But anyway, that was kind of cool to hear her feedback on that one. And that painting is still available. The title is The Whole World is Moving. And that came to me, I think on the last session when I was listening to music. All of the music I was listening to during the week were songs that I had downloaded on my phone that were from like my 10, 15, 20-year-old, not 20, but 15-year-old Apple's iTunes library. So I have all these like old songs that I bought years and years ago, and I just re-listen to the same 250 songs, which kind of sounds crazy, but this song, The World Spins Madly On by the Weepies, came on for the first time all week while I was finishing this painting on Thursday, and I'm standing there kind of listening to this song, and I had this weird like moment when I was painting where like the lyrics and the music and like the light in the trees and like everything that happened with that particular painting, where it went through this like up and down experience, it like I had this weird realization of like this like sense of time is like fleeting, and it's such a basic, obvious thing to say, but in painting, like sometimes you're so focused on your painting and everything you're trying to finish with the painting, you kind of lose sight of these like life moment realizations that sometimes can happen. And it happened in this painting with that song playing, where it just felt like I think I just got really homesick for a moment as I was making this painting. And the painting is kind of about, or not the painting, the song is kind of about missing someone who's gone and not with you anymore, and time doesn't stop, and like you just keep moving, and life goes on and everything just keeps changing. And I think I just kind of had this weird feeling when that song came on, because I have been, fortunately I've been so busy the last couple months that I've gone to a couple like plein air events and taught a workshop, and Megan and I got to go to Spain, and then I was in Door County, and I just had this weird feeling of like, I just want to be home. I just want to be like home with my family and like my close friends. And I feel like everyone I know is just getting older, and I'm missing all of this time with people. And like, what was also interesting about this view in this location is, as you can see in the photograph, there's this little like cement wall that creates this large rectangle in the woods. And I remember one of the last 2 years, I think it was probably my first year, my hosts, Tim and Marcella, told me that there was this old tennis court in the woods that has been overgrown. And it was like a real like sod or whatever tennis court. Like, I don't think it's concrete or anything like that. And it's all that's left is this like concrete sort of fence barrier. And that's what I was painting this whole time. I was painting this like abandoned, or like, this reclaimed tennis court area where these trees now occupy that space. And it just like, with the song and like those feelings and looking at this subject, it dawned on me that like everything is just this fleeting moment. And like, because the painting had these like this like ghostly atmosphere, like it just like hit me. And like, I wasn't like emotional or crying or anything crazy, it wasn't that extreme, but I had this weird visceral kind of response where I just felt like, I'm not in my 20s anymore, and I'm getting older, and like if I want to do things with my life, I have to start making some pretty important decisions here. And I also started to think about some of these trees, and like when you sit with something, whether it's a tree or a building, or as a painter, if you're just sitting and observing something for hours and hours and hours, you kind of start to feel like, at least for me, it kind of starts to become like this, maybe like a reflection of yourself, or that might be too grandiose, I don't know, but you start to see it as like this object that has sat in space, in this one place and time, for however much time, and it will continue to sit there for however much time, and you're spending this moment with it, and everything around it is changing, and everything around it is moving. And that lyric came on with the song, that the whole world is moving and I'm standing still. And I just looked at that centered tree, or like these couple of different trees that I was really trying to portray, and it kind of felt like this is like the song is like for these trees. It's, again, it sounds very weird and kind of hippie-ish, but like honestly, that's kind of what went through my head when I was wrapping up this painting and that song came on, and I just felt like it makes sense to pull the lyrics from that song. And yeah, so when it went up in the show, I immediately was kind of like, if I get to go home with this painting, I'm actually kind of looking forward to it, because it became this symbol of that realization and that like, epiphany, kind of like, if I want to do certain things with certain people in my life, I have to do that now, like appreciate that current moment. And I think just because of not being home more than like 4 days at a time for the last 2.5 months, it's just like, I just was like missing so many people in my life. But anyhow, that's the very personal kind of weird moment I had during the week too, with that painting, and at that point in the week where just it was an unusual plein air event for me. That kind of stuff has never happened to me before, and I think a lot of that is just the context of what was happening before and after the event. So after I wrapped up that painting, I ended up going to this little highway spot again and just touched up some things. I really wanted to push the color a little bit more because we had very similar, like, warm afternoon, early evening light, and the contrasts of temperature in the shadows to, like, the rooftop of the building were so beautiful and rich, and, like, there was a pinky orange rooftop to this really, really blue, kind of like purpley blue in the shadows. I was like, that's what I want in my painting. I want that, like, color, those color relationships and those hue relationships in the painting. So I went back and kind of mixed a little bit more pure colors into my palette and just layered over what was there and kind of tightened some things up and simplified certain things. But I'm really happy with how this painting turned out. I like that it's really harmonious and a very warm palette outside of those cool blues, excuse me, those cool blues and the rooftop. Everything else is very warm leaning as a palette. So that was a lot of fun to incorporate. This painting is titled Odd Duck. It took me a long time to think of a title for this painting. But eventually I was starting to see these as, like, ducks in a row. That was a title I thought about for a while, but that felt a little too maybe elementary or something. But then I remember being somewhere, I think in the fall, or I was having a conversation with somebody about a restaurant called Odd Duck, and it has, like, stuck with me. And so that kind of popped back in my head, and I was like, yeah, that makes sense. You know, it's like kind of like Duck Duck Goose a little bit, where it's like you got the same thing, and all of a sudden there's something different. Like, I like that sort of contrast in similarities in the painting. Excuse me. All right, I need to start to wrap things up here now that we're over the 2-hour mark. Thank you, by the way, to everyone who's tuned in during the live stream. This looks like it's been a pretty, for me, a pretty successful live stream in terms of attendance. I don't usually get that many people tuning in, so this is kind of cool to have people pop on throughout the live stream. Yeah, let's go ahead and move on. So this is the gallery display that I had during the reception. We turn everything in Friday by noon. There's a really hard deadline where you have to have everything in by noon, and then you're out of the gallery so that the volunteers can hang the show. And I put 2 pictures here because I totally forgot to take a picture with me standing in front of my wall with my original gallery display. So on the right here is what I showed in order for the Friday reception, which, if you're not familiar with Door County's layout of the show, Friday night is like the collector's sort of preview. You have to have a patron pallet pass to attend on Friday night, and then and they usually sell out of those tickets. It's a really well supported aspect of the event. Everyone who has a ticket is invited to come on Friday night to see the show. There's the award ceremony, and then there's the sale. But the sale is a silent auction. So on the side of everyone's displays is a little sheet with the titles of every painting. And then they pop up the silent auction paperwork where people can go up and write their bids throughout the night. So this was the display that I had. I was able to fit 5 of my paintings. I didn't really plan things out as well as I probably could have. I could have maybe had another small painting somewhere in here, but it didn't really work out. So anyway, this was my 5 painting display, and I'm happy because I felt like these were my 5 best paintings out of the week. So honestly, it worked out okay. But the one regret that I do have about my order, because we get to pick the order of our work, is that I put the Nocturne on the bottom. I think it would have worked well, like 3rd from the top, maybe, like right in between these 2 paintings, because typically you don't want to hang Nocturnes up high in the gallery where a lot of light is hitting. You're like closest to the light source, and with the glare it's really hard to read a nocturne painting if it's up too high. So I was just like, okay, I'm going to do the opposite and put it at the bottom. But even in the two pictures, you can kind of see the amount of shifting and light that happens between the painting just being, a foot higher on the wall. So I wish I would have had this higher up. But anyway, that's the only thing I didn't like about my order that I selected. And so then this second photo was taken actually by Mark Anderson's, his wife Anna was nice enough to take a few photos of me on Saturday, the next day. So this is what I showed on Saturday when the show was open to the public. As you can tell, it's not the same wall of paintings. On Friday night, all of the sold paintings that didn't win any awards are taken by the collectors. So it's kind of a perk of being a palette pass holder, is that you get to see all of the artists' best works, best works in their opinion. Everybody's trying to put up their best paintings for the awards and just for sales and that kind of stuff. So once they sell, you don't get to see them anymore. And, it motivates people to get the palette pass. But sometimes it is a little bit of a bummer that the public doesn't get to see those paintings in person if they sell. But Mark and I are usually next to each other with our last names, which is always really fun and really cool. And I should say, big congratulations to Mark. He won the Artist Choice Award at Door County this year. So if you see Mark Anderson, please congratulate him. I don't have a picture of his original wall. There were a few paintings in his original wall that were really, really incredible paintings that we can't see in this photo. This middle one right by my head, though, is insane. So you should definitely search his website. And if you're not already following him on Instagram or have been to his website, you should go look at that painting. It's really, really cool. But anyway, that's my wall in the gallery. Let's keep going down. I have a few pictures left to show, and then I'll wrap things up. This is the view of the room right as the award ceremony was happening. And in Door County, they have, I think, like 6 awards or so. There's Best of Show, first place, second place, third place. There's, I think this year they had 2 honorable mentions. So that's 6. And then with Artist Choice, that's 7. Yeah, I think that's right. But anyway, so they had the award ceremony. This year, the judge was Charlie Hunter, who's an amazing artist, really nice guy, a very, one-of-a-kind person and artist. If you're not familiar with Charlie Hunter, I'm assuming most of you who are watching my streams for the plein air kind of work that I make, you're probably already familiar with Charlie Hunter's work. But if not, definitely look him up. He's a Vermont artist, and I met him 3 years ago at the Door County Plein Air Festival. And he's been super supportive and encouraging of my work ever since. And I owe a lot to Charlie just with helping get my name out into the community a lot more. He's built up and amassed a really kind of devoted network and community of followers between his different channels. He also does a lot of live streams. So on YouTube, you should check him out as well. He has a podcast that he's invited me on to talk about some of my work. Which was really helpful and really nice, again, in getting my name out there into the community. So it was cool to have him in Door County again as the judge this year, and to see him very briefly during that show. He's a very popular guy, so it's sometimes it can be a challenge to get to chat with him. But I also felt like I've had a lot of my own time with Charlie. He was really generous and invited me and a few other painters back in February to his house and to not his house, but his community in Bellows Falls. We got to hang out with him in his hometown and paint in his studio with him and just hang out with him for like 4 days. So I kind of felt like, I've already been privy to a lot of time with Charlie. So it was kind of nice to just see him for a few moments, but hopefully I'll get to see him again soon. He's super awesome. And then this little painting, this little hollyhocks painting on the left is a little 5 by 7. Is it a 5? Yeah, it's a little 5 by 7 painting that I made for my hosts from the week. So I gifted them the painting. I didn't have a frame, so I have to build a frame for them still. But I like how this painting turned out. And again, this happens a lot where you turn everything in and then you're like, you're like painting stress free for a while, and until your next show. I feel like that happens to most of us. So I feel like that painting was kind of a fun small experiment to make. I don't paint that many flowers, so it's fun to just do something different. And then so that was right before the reception, actually. And then Saturday morning was the last kind of thing we had for the event, and they do a quick paint from 9 to 11 in Fish Creek. So this year I tried to actually last year I did this too, which helped a lot. During the week I went around Fish Creek and just made a few little thumbnail drawings, just to have an idea of something I could do for the quick paint. And I did this on Friday. Actually, this hollyhocks painting was made in Fish Creek as well. So first I went around and I made 2 or 3 different thumbnails, and then I made the hollyhocks painting. But this area here with the on-deck building, this clothing store, and the intersection that was here, that's where I was making my little thumbnail. So I knew I was going to paint something over in that area. And then Saturday morning when I parked my van and started walking towards the check-in table where they stamped our panels and gave us breakfast, I saw this little red truck. Oh, gosh, excuse me. When I start yawning, that means I need to end my stream. Okay, so I saw this red truck parked like perfectly in front of the building that I was thinking about painting. So it made it really easy to decide what to do for my quick paint. And I'm really happy with how this painting turned out. It was a lot of fun to make. I worked with a pretty limited palette of colors. I think this was mostly alizarin permanent again, phthalo green again, and then cadmium yellow medium. I want to say those were the main colors that I used, and then I also pulled a little bit of cadmium red in for some of the like punchy, like stop sign fire truck reds that are in the truck. But everything else is with those 3 colors, and that allowed me to really focus more on shape and value, relationships, atmosphere, proportions, that kind of stuff. Which I kind of wish I would have done more of that for some of my paintings earlier in the week, but it's difficult for me sometimes to decide if I want to paint something naturalistically to the colors that are in front of me, or if I want to take a little bit more of a creative liberty and start with a limited palette that is not like optically accurate to the colors that are locally in front of me. So doing the latter, sometimes I feel like I get to have more creative control and more experiments in the process that way. That really varies. But this painting, it flowed really well in the 2 hours that I was working, and I kind of had learned throughout the week, like, just put the headphones on, try to focus, give people more of the show of painting and less of the conversation of painting, and it really worked out. I'm happy with the result, and people were very, understanding and just helpful in letting me work during that time and not pressuring me to like answer questions or talk about the week, that kind of stuff. So this was really fun just to do this. The best part about this painting, though, was that the family who owns this truck, I had kind of heard this in the last 2 years, that this little red truck will be parked in Fish Creek just for the quick paint because the family wants artists to paint their truck and incorporate their truck. So when it was parked there, immediately I thought, okay, I think this is that same truck that is parked here every year, and I don't think it's going to move. So that helped me commit to this subject. But also I thought, okay, from a business artist standpoint, I'm like, this could probably sell during the live auction that they do after the quick paint. And I thought, okay, this hopefully we'll get a few bids at least too, because maybe the owners will want to buy the painting. So I felt kind of safe making and that allowed me to not worry so much about after the painting. I could just focus on making the painting. But the family who owns the truck, I didn't know this until I was done painting. They were sitting right behind me basically the whole time I was painting, watching me make the painting in real time. And that was pretty cool while I was working. A weird thing that happened is that a car accident happened right in front of this entire part of the street while I was working too. It wasn't extreme or crazy, but basically a guy with a trailer for his boat. The boat wasn't on the trailer. I think he was going to pick up his boat. he didn't see someone turning right and clipped the front end of their bumper and basically ripped off their bumper of their like little SUV kind of car. And all of that was like right in front of it. Took up like this much space of what I was painting. So I had to kind of like move around a little bit, and the owner of the truck actually went out and he was helping like hold the bumper as they like moved the car out of the way. So it's a very memorable painting for multiple reasons, but it ended up selling during the auction. I think it sold for $1,400 or something, which I was really happy with. And the cool thing though is that the family who bought the painting, they found me afterwards in the gallery and asked to take a picture with me. And they have I think they have 4 or 5 sons. It's like this couple with 4 or 5 boys. So they're a pretty big unit of people. And all of us took a group photo, and they asked me some questions about the painting. They were just so happy that they won the bid during the live auction, and that that they got to watch me paint it, and they're so excited about it, which, as the artist, you're so excited to hear people say stuff like that. And they were asking about the painting, if they had to worry about varnishing it or the frame, and I said it's all ready to hang. I made the frame, and they were like, "You made the frame," and they kind of like started to freak out about me making the frame, which was really cool too. And then they left, which was a great interaction with them. And like the show came down, and all the artists sort of hung out until things wrapped up. And what was kind of wild is that next morning I got a notification on Instagram that I was tagged in a post, and this family had apparently like filmed and recorded most of that day, most of their Saturday, and I was in the video. They started it with them like driving to Fish Creek and like parking the truck, and then like a picture of me painting my painting, and then a picture of them under the big tent at the auction, and then the picture of us holding the painting that they bought the painting, and then the real video continued, and it showed them like with the painting back in their house, and then there was a picture of the painting on a table, and one of their sons was painting with watercolors a red truck while looking at my painting. And I watched this reel like Saturday or Sunday morning, and I almost started crying. I was just kind of like, this is crazy. Like, people never, I never get to see that personal side of what happens with my paintings after they go to someone's home, and like never expected to see something like that, and just was so like honored and grateful that they enjoy the painting already to that degree. It was so cool to see that that one of their sons was like inspired by the painting, I guess. And yeah, it was really, really cool to see that they shared that with me. This is my friend Laura Bianco, who is from New York. She was one of the artists in Door County this year. We met actually 3 years ago at the Door County Plein Festival and have been friends online ever since. And she's super awesome, one of my favorite plein air people in the community. And she's mostly a pastel artist. I think she paints, but mostly with pastels. And this year we were in 3 events together, so I really wanted to get a picture with her just as like a memento of our tour in the plein air circuit this year, because we were both in Florida in Lighthouse, and then we were in Traverse City, and then we wrapped up our like connecting schedule in Door County this year. So it was really cool to be able to see her multiple times in one year. So she's really awesome. Definitely check out her work as well. Again, her name is Laura M. Bianco, Bianco. She's from New York. And then that wrapped up the Door County Plein Air Festival. It went by really fast, but I was happy with a lot of the work that I made and the experiences I got to have, the people I got to see and meet and reconnect with. I was honored to be in the show. The show as a whole was really impressive. There was a lot of really, really good painting. There were a lot of really good paintings made by the artists in the show, and I was happy with the feedback that I got from my peers and the collectors and just other patrons that walked through the event. So it's anytime you get those sort of combinations of experiences, it's hard to walk away and not just feel grateful and honored and, appreciate the opportunity to be there, to paint for a whole week in such a beautiful place that's so well supported by a community is a big deal. So I'm really, really happy I got to be there again this year. And then right after the festival, I was invited back in the fall. I was invited by a collector of mine, Duska, to be a featured artist in this house and garden tour in Ephraim. Originally, there was another artist friend of ours who's local to Door County, and she had something come up and wasn't able to participate anymore or commit to the event anymore just because she wasn't sure what her schedule would be like. So Duska reached out to me and I said, yeah, I'd love to share some paintings in that show or in this event. And it's right after the festival, so she offered to let me stay with them too, so I got to kind of move hosts, and then I was with her and her husband Scott in their home right off of Green Bay, which is really cool, like right off of the water. But anyway, I got to reconnect with my my award-winning painting from 2022, the Good Eggs, Cracked a Few Good Eggs painting that won Best of Show in Door County in 2022. So Duska and her husband, they've been like supporters of the Good Eggs breakfast little restaurant in Ephraim for years, like 10 to 15 years or something like that, they were saying. But their daughter, at least one of their daughters, worked there for over 10 years. So they are very familiar with Good Eggs. And when she saw this painting in the gallery in 2022, I remember she came up to me and introduced herself and like said she loved my painting and how it's like she knew it was Good Eggs without reading the title because they've been there so much over the years, and they ended up buying my painting. And it's so cool when something like this happens where like a collector already has this very personal connection to whatever you've painted. And I felt like it was so special that like it's one of these paintings that it's kind of not really about anything like consequential or anything significant. It's just very like quotidian and everyday and kind of not mundane, but just very basic, and it's just more about like passing between places. It's not really about where you're beginning or where you're ending. It's sort of the journey between that part of your day. And I like that had resonated with her that much. So anyway, it was cool to see that painting again and to see it on this nice big blank wall in their kitchen right now. And yeah, it's just really gratifying to be able to see your work kind of out in the wild like that. So then this is the display that I had for the house and garden tour. This is like half of the display actually, but it was in their garage on this property that they own, and the house was on the tour. The gardens around the property were on the tour, but then my artwork was featured on the tour as well. And I think from what I gathered, there were 5 different locations all around the peninsula, and it was like a full day event. So people were coming in throughout the day and touring each of the properties. So yeah, coming out of the Plein Air Festival, it was kind of interesting because there was already so much interaction that I was having with the public, and this just kind of like flowed right after that as well. But at one point I kind of took a break and started making a little plein air painting. This is an 8x10 painting looking at the trees kind of behind the cottage there, or the garage. But as a space, like this was built I think in 2014 or maybe 2019 or something. I can't remember. It's not that old, so it's pretty nice inside this garage, and it felt like a little gallery actually. Once my artwork was up on the walls and we kind of swept out the floor and cleaned things up a little bit, it really felt like it could be like a pop-up gallery sort of space. So that was really cool to see it transform. I'm happy to share that I sold 2 of my paintings, which was pretty cool. 2 kind of smaller pieces. So I also got to make a little bit of extra money that day, which was nice. And added a few new people to my email list, which reminds me, if you're not on my email list and you want to keep up with news and updates, actually right here on the screen underneath my video of me, right here, you can type that URL in and you can find the sign up page on my website for my email list. But anyway, that was the day. It was really fun. It was kind of a long day. And after the festival and after doing this, I was pretty much ready to head home. I think at that point I was like just a little bit burnt out by that point. But it was interesting because the festival ended on Saturday, but the tour wasn't until Tuesday. So I was around all day Sunday, all day Monday, and then Tuesday was like this long day commitment, and then I left Wednesday morning. I left Door County. So it was nice to be there on Saturday and Sunday because I was able to stop into a couple galleries, pick up a few souvenirs for some of my family members. I was able to go hang out with Mark Anderson and our friend Antoine and his wife and Mark's wife Anna at their house in Sturgeon Bay. So that was a lot of fun too. That was honestly one of the best things that kind of came out of this schedule that I had this year at Door County, was that I had a lot of extra downtime between these two commitments, and I didn't feel rushed. I actually got to be a little bit of a tourist in Door County for a moment, which was kind of nice. And then Wednesday morning, I left to head to Megan's family's cottage in central Wisconsin for the next 4 days. So July just kind of flew by because of all of these trips, and then going to these different places. But anyway, on my way out of Door County, though, I stopped at my friend Emmett Johns' studio and gallery because I had re-met Emmett's wife and daughter, who were on the tour on Tuesday. So they came into the garage and we started chatting, and I quickly realized that we had met before, and they were like, I was friends with Emmett on Instagram. We've kind of kept in touch online the last 2 years, and they're like, you should stop by his gallery. He'd love to see you. He really loves your work. And so Wednesday I popped in just kind of unannounced, and in the morning, luckily they were home, and they just like invited me in right away, and we hung out for like 25 minutes or 30 minutes and just talked about painting, and he was very kind and complimentary on my work, and his daughter had bought one of my zines before, and he said like he was a huge fan of the book because I guess she let him borrow it, and so I brought an extra copy in, and we did a trade for one of his books that he's made. So that was really cool too. But I hope to see him again next time I'm in Door County, if I have the time to just kind of pop in and just have more time to talk about painting and more of the philosophy on painting, because that was something we quickly kind of jumped into. It's just like, we had a lot of shared influences in painters, whether that was the Bay figurative artists or like David Park. Obviously Diebenkorn is kind of like the godfather of that group over there, but and then more other names like Lois Dodd, who I don't hear too many people talk about, which is kind of cool. Her work, I really enjoy the subject matter in particular, and I could see some of the influences in some of his work too. And we talked about Goya and a bunch of other people, so that was really cool to be able to share that moment with Emmett on Wednesday morning then. And then, I went and hung out with Megan's family for a few days, and then came back here and have basically spent August so far back home since like I think it was like the 5th of August or 4th of August we got back, something like that. So I've just been working now towards this pop-up solo show that I'm having, and this is what I'm going to talk about as I wrap up the presentation today. So some of you might be familiar with this event already. It's something I've been kind of talking about in past videos and posts. Let me just slide this up a little bit so we can see the bottom of my presentation here. So I reserved this gallery space in Cudahy called Task Creative for the weekend of August 17th. So Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I'm going to have a solo show of studio work on view in Cudahy, Wisconsin. It's about 15 minutes, maybe a little less than that, from like downtown Milwaukee. It's really close to Milwaukee, but not technically in Milwaukee. So Cudahy is its own little city. The space that the show is going to be in is really, really cool, and I'm excited to see my paintings in there. It looks like a state-of-the-art, kind of white cube gallery, which is surprising from the outside of the building. You kind of walk in and it's really kind of takes you into this new dimension in some ways. So I'm really excited to see how the work looks in there. And I have a couple paintings to finish up. Mostly I'm working on making frames right now for 8 or 9 paintings that don't have frames. The show is called You Can Go Anywhere But You Are Where You Came From. It's another song lyric, actually, from a Manchester orchestra song. And they're definitely one of my favorite bands. And their album, A Black Mile to the Surface, is one of my probably top 10 favorite albums, if not like top 5 favorite albums. So if you're not familiar with Manchester Orchestra's music, you should definitely go check out that album. I think it's a masterpiece, piece of music. But anyway, they have one song on the album called The Silence. It's the sort of closing song on the album. And there's this lyric in the song, you can go anywhere, but you are where you came from. And every time I listen to that song, that lyric always kind of like rises out and like becomes its own little idea that I always just immediately feel connected to. And it relates to so many things I've thought about in my studio practice over the years. And this pop-up show is going to have over 50 original studio paintings. So I haven't shown a lot of studio work in the last 2 years. And I've been really meaning to find opportunities to do a solo show of my studio work. And this space is like the perfect solution to that feeling and that problem. So I'm excited to see all of this work together in the gallery. And a lot of it is kind of with this motif that I've been playing with the last couple years that has been kind of a studio visual motif, but I've also created props to stage this box hand prop idea out in plein air as well. So some of the work in the show is plein air, but dealing with more of this like staging kind of concept. So I'm excited to share those paintings as well. But there are going to be oil paintings, gouache paintings. There's at least one cassine painting, and then a bunch of egg tempera paintings as well. So I'm really eager to see the response to the work. At least maybe a third of the work has never been shown before. So for me, it feels like the first sort of debut for a lot of my ideas that I've been exploring in my studio, which, as you can tell, is very different than my plein air work. There's a lot more surreal elements. There's a lot more imaginative kind of elements coming through. I printed a bunch of posters. I designed a bunch of posters and postcards that I, mailed out to like 56 or 60 different people and galleries, and we'll see who shows up to the show. I've been trying to really get some momentum with spreading the word. If you're in Wisconsin or Northern Illinois or Michigan and you want to come see this show, if you're in the Midwest and you can make it to Cudahy this Saturday, I'm having the public reception. That's kind of the main show time. I don't know if people will be stopping in Friday or Sunday. I'm kind of advertising those hours as like a appointment only kind of way to see the show. So if people are busy Saturday night, you can still see the show. You just have to reach out to me and contact me through my website to schedule a time to view the show Saturday or Friday and Sunday between noon and 6. I think those are the open windows of time. So anyway, I'm working hard this week to wrap things up and get things ready for that show. So after the stream is over, I'll head back out to the garage and work on my frames. I have 2 paintings to finish up as well. This one, it's shown here and it's kind of in progress state, but I finished this painting as well. It's one of the 2 larger paintings in the show. It's 5 feet tall by 4 feet wide. It's a very big change in terms of scale for me. I've been mostly staying within like 24 by 24 and smaller sizes, so it felt really good to build some big, cradled canvases in my garage and to make these big paintings. So I'm really excited to share these 2 paintings. The second big one is the one that needs to kind of get finished, or at least pushed along a little bit more for the show on Friday and Saturday. So I hope you can make it. You are invited. Your family is invited. Your friends are invited. Your neighbors are invited. Anyone you know that you think would enjoy coming to this big solo show of a lot of wacky, representational, surreal paintings, all those people that you're thinking of are invited. So please help spread the word if you can. I have some posts on Instagram and Facebook that you should be able to share. You can find more information on my website, acunhaarts.com. And yeah, I'll definitely do a video, probably wrap up on how this goes, maybe in the next 2 weeks or so. We'll see how much time I have this month, but it'd be fun to talk about the solo show. If you have any questions about anything I talked about in this video, please feel free to add those down in the comments. Thank you so much to anyone who was here for the majority of the stream, or even if you just popped in for a few minutes. I appreciate you taking the time to check out what I'm sharing and talking about. It's really great to have this as a medium to share my process and to really slow down how I'm sharing what I do as an artist with anyone who wants to listen and view these presentations. So I think that's it. We'll wrap it up here. Again, thank you so much for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe, the whole YouTube plug type stuff. If you're not subscribed, it helps me grow this channel and reach more people who maybe want to support my work and my business as a painter and as an artist. I think that's kind of it for today for the announcements. So stay tuned for my pop-up show. I hope to see some of you there. Yeah, again, if you have any questions, let me know. I think this is it. So huge thanks, especially to Gigi and Mark for sharing some comments and asking some questions. I really appreciate that too. But I think that's it. I'm going to sign off. I hope you have a great week, and take care, everyone. I'll try my best to give you plenty of time and notice for whatever the next live stream is going to be and when that will be scheduled. So yeah, I think that's it. All right. Goodbye, everyone. Take care, and thanks.